I always forgot to record this. Photograph was revolutionized in 1851 by the introduction of the collodion process for making glass negatives. But the problem is, the subject is not photograph. It should be photography. Photography is the art, the science, the process of taking picture, right? Photograph is a noun, yes, but it refers to one picture. But photography is the practice of taking picture. It's different, okay? So basically you have to put a Y here. And if we use the roots to understand the word, that would be much easier for you to clarify the meaning. Photo. Photo means light. Photo means light, okay? And graph. Graph refers to something. Something written or drawn. So you can see, photograph is something written by light. So it's a picture, right? But how about Y here? Y refers to a system, a process, or study, or some kind of understanding. So photography is a system, a process of using light to create graph. Okay? So that is a photography. Okay. So let's move up a bit to 22. 22 here, let's see. Okay, so this one, onyx, this is a B verb. It's a mineral. So we have finished the structure, right? So look here, we have subject. We have a be verb, verb be, right? And we have a subject complement. So basically, this sentence has been completed. But now we have that can be, this one is an adjective clause used to modify mineral, right? So it is an adjective, 形容词子句. So it only functions as this. So it's a modifier by its definition. So now let's look at here. That can be recognized by. We have to put a by here. By is regular and straight, parallel. Regular and straight, straight is an adjective, parallel is a noun. I'm sorry, straight, parallel, brands of white, black, and brown, or brown. They are all noun. Here is noun, noun, or noun. And this is adjective, adjective, and this used to modify bands. So that will be fine, okay? And 22 up to number 9. Okay, so let's see this one. Hell is formed, done. So we have finished this complete sentence. Is formed. Hell is formed. And we have an adverb. Putting over here, this is adverb clause. Where a drop, a rain, is carried by an updraft to an attitude. So this is formed at this occasion. And the attitude is modified by this clause. When and where are both subordinative conjunction. They can lead subordinative clause. It is an adjective. So here we have a where is used to modify attitude. And this one is used to modify be verb is formed, okay? So basically, we know this should be a clause, right? Because it is followed with subordinative conjunction. So now, we need to find out components that can make it to become a clause. So which one can become the clause? Well, this one is the only choice. The air is cold enough to freeze it. Okay, so this is only one, and there's no other choice. Okay. And let's go to 25. Okay. So originally canons, this is the subject, right? So were made, we have were made by the hollowing out of logs, and were used, We have to change the sequence of the wording here. And were used for combat as well as transport. So we have a subject, were made, and were used. So they are both followed with canoe. Okay, so this is the right format. But you cannot use this, used and were. That's very strange. Okay, so 25 and 19. Go up to 19. Well, this one is a little bit confusing for me because I know the answer should be particularly, not particular. The emergence of particularly Boston, New York, and Philadelphia as major, because we witnessed the emergence of North American ports, particularly refers to the emergence of the Boston, New York, and Philadelphia. But as major commercial centers within the British Empire, I'm a little bit confused about the within. But I thought it could be, yes, because it is inside. Inside the British Empire. So that should be right. What is the answer for this one? I'm a little bit confused. Huh? I'm correct, particularly? Huh? Yeah, that should be particularly, yeah. But with the use of within is a little bit confusing. Well, but I believe that the answer should. Yeah, okay. Okay, anyway, but thanks for this one, and I will double check for this one to clarify about the use of within here. But I'm quite sure about the answer should be particularly. Anyway, I will give 19 extra credit because I'm kind of confused. Okay, so let's go to number 40. Okay. The Democratic Party, it is the oldest existing political party. So basically, this is redundant. We don't use the most oldest. Oldest is already the most, right? So you don't use most oldest. That would be very strange. So when we write our sentence, we try to avoid redundancy. And this is a very good example of redundancy. Most oldest. Oldest already is the extreme, the only one. So you don't use most oldest, right? Just like a lot of time I saw students writing according to my past experiences. Well, past experiences is actually construction of redundancy. Why? Because when you refer to experiences, must be in the past. So you don't need to write past experiences. Okay, it is redundant. Okay, so let's continue to number 14. Okay. Let's look at the structure here. We notice that there's a but here, right? And but is a coordinative conjunction. And the famous coordinative conjunctions are as follow. We call fanboys. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So there are 7 different kind of coordinate conjunction. You can have a nickname we call fanboys. These are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So these 7 are called as coordinate conjunction, 对的连接词. So when you use these 7 different conjunctions, you have to make sure that the connecting parts on the right and left should be equal in terms of grammatical structure. Okay, so let's look here. We have but this is a coordinate conjunction, right? So here is an independent clause. And over here, this should be an independent clause too. So let's double check. What is the independent clause in the left, on the left? What is the subject? The subject on the left is the settings. Settings of your dura-waiting stories may be rather limited. So this is the structure on the left. But how about on the right? So we have to find out about human nature is, there's a is, right? This is the be verb. It's quite broad. This is subject complement. So what we need here is we need to make sure this one can become a subject. We need to find out some subject here, so that we can make sure this segment is a subject or a noun. So let's use a smaller font here. So look here, we have to make sure that this is a subject, can have a subject over there. And this is be verb, and this is a subject complement, right? So which one can make this become, this segment become a subject? Well, this one is the only choice. What she exposes about human nature, this is a noun clause. Subject is a noun, right? Noun clause is a noun. So noun clause can become a subject. So this is the subject. What she exposes about human nature, the thing. What she exposes about human nature, the thing of this. This is a subject because it is a noun clause. Remember, when we say a subject, must be a noun, right? Remember, it can be a single noun or a noun phrase or a noun clause as long as it is a noun. So far we have what she exposes about human nature. The action, the writing style is quite broad. So the answer is D. Okay? Okay, so we will stop now and let's take a break. And I think we need to stay here for a little bit longer. I mean, after the break. So students from the other classrooms, they come back here and join the class here. Okay. Okay, now, have your seat, please. So today let's have some fun on botany, something that is quite different from our daily life. But we eat it most of the time. That is corn. But corn is a mysterious plant, and it has a wonderful story that we need to explore a little bit. Okay. So this is lesson 5, the plant's corn's conquest. So as you can see from here, the conquest coming out from corn. My goodness, so huge, so grand. So let's move on to the major outline for today. And today you are going to know we are what we eat. Actually, we are what we eat. It seems to be a common sense. But that is far beyond your common sense. The understanding of what we are biologically is something that we need to pay a little bit attention to this. And after the readings, the main text, we move on to English etymology and sentence structures. And by the end of the class, we have our assignments, and I will ask you how to write it. But before we start, I want you to give you some of my observation about your quiz taking. I noticed some students have tried very hard to write on their essay questions, which is good. You know, an essay question in college writing is a good way for you to express your idea, your ability to argue, and the way of your mastering English and so on. But I also noticed some students just don't write. That is bad. You cannot just leave all the essay questions blank over there and hope for nothing. You do not have the attitude. Remember the Matthew effect. The Matthew effect emphasizes on 3 different issues. One is you need to have the ability. The second one is you have the will to develop that ability. And the system, number 3, the system will try to support you. Okay? So if you don't care about your own ability, maybe you feel that your English proficiency is not that sufficient. But if you do not ever try to improve it, that would be quite a problem. That would be quite a problem. So at best, you have to try your best to do something, write something, go home and study. You really need to study hard in order to have a fruitful college life, okay? It's very important. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. The Kong people for 9,000 years. Kong people? Who are the Kong people we talk about? So as you can see here, descendants of the Maya living in Mexico. So Maya culture originated from 9,000 years ago. So those people, the descendants of Maya living in Mexico, still sometimes refers to themselves as the Kong people. Oh, okay, so now we know who the Kong people are, right? At least they call themselves as the Kong people. So this phrase, the Kong phrase, not Kong phrase, the Kong people. The Kong people, the phrase here, is not intended to a metaphor. Metaphor refers to something analogy. No, it is not an analogy. It is a fact. Rather, it's meant to acknowledge their abiding dependence on this miraculous grass. So corn is a kind of grass, not a tree. Okay, let's clarify that. But this kind of grass is very, very miraculous. It is full of miracle. The staple of their diet for almost 9,000 years. So imagine this. The Maya ancestors and their current descendants, they have depended on corn for 9,000 years. So this one, they eat corn, they consume corn, then every part on their bodies are actually made up from corn. So if they call themselves as the corn people, that is quite understandable, right? Okay, 你们不要玩手机，放下来，读书，上课。Okay, pay attention to. So since you are here, and then just do something about study, not about playing cell phone. That is not right. Okay. So this is they call themselves corn people. So it is something rooted on their fact. Is that right? Okay. So corn walking. Let's talk about corn walking. So 40% of the calories a Mexican eats in a day come directly from corn. So you can see 40% of the calories a Mexican eats a day come directly from corn. And most of it in the form of tortillas. Tortilla is a kind of soft cake. You just eat it. There are two versions, soft and hard. You make your own choice. And you can put a lot of beans inside and eat it. Okay, so this is tortillas. So when a Mexican says, I am maize, or corn walking, I'm corn walking, I'm maize, it is simply a statement fact. So look here, they are corn people, right? So let me draw the corn here. So corn people. So the corn people here, we have a corn head, and we have a, this is the corn. And 40% of the corn people, the nutrients of the corn people come out from corn, right? So basically, you can imagine this. This part of the corn people are made of corn. So they walk on the street, so they are corn walking. It's nice metaphor, right? So what kind of people you are? Are you a pork people, pig people, or chicken people? I have no idea, but I eat a lot of chicken, so maybe I can call myself chicken people. Not that great, right? So, but anyway, let's look at the corn people. So when Mexicans call themselves corn walking corn people, they are not kidding. They are just describing the fact. The very substance of the Mexican's body is to a considerable extent a manifestation to this plant. Okay, so basically manifestation means obvious statement. It is there. So 40% you can observe a Mexican. If we want to make it more precise, the descendants of the Maya now living in Mexican. So if you look at the person, 40% of them were corn. So if you look at me, maybe 10% of me is chicken. That would be very amazing to imagine, right? Okay, so corn people for 9,000 years. And now, so sometimes it is kind of difficult to imagine our food origin. We eat a lot of food. For example, from the perspective of an American, for an American like me, I'm not American, of course, just the author. Growing up linked to a very different food chain, we have a different food chain, right? Americans eat a lot of burgers, eat a lot of hot dogs, and enjoy McDonald's foods. and Burger King and Coca-Cola, right? You can imagine that. And they would go to the supermarket for a lot of big bag of potato chips and snacks, okay? So yet, this food chain, one that is also rooted in a field of corn. Are you sure about that? The food chain that Americans rely on is really based on a field of corn. Nothing to think of himself as a corn person suggests. If we ask Americans, are you a corn people? Are you a corn person? I don't believe that Americans will say, yeah, I am a corn people. No, they don't. But why? Since they eat a lot of food coming out from corns, but they do not call themselves as the corn people. Rather than the descendants of Maya in Mexico, they always call themselves as a corn people, right? Okay, so there must be some reasons out there. Some reasons out there. Okay, the first reason. Maybe it's a failure of imagination. Americans do not have the ability to make themselves feeling fun. Imagination, lacking of imagination is one. Okay, and maybe it is a triumph of capitalism. Those business owners try to make you believe that what you eat is something unique, genuine, coming out from some farms, but not a field of corn. Or perhaps a little both. A little both. Both you don't have. That's it. Maybe, right? So let's look at the marvelous disguise by the food industry. Actually, the food industry is cheating you. Actually, they take out their ingredient, the raw materials from corn, but tell you they are all different. They are not corn at all. So let's look at this. So basically, we need to have two kinds of ability. One, ability. The other one is try to avoid the disguise of capitalism. So let's take a look at the first one. It does take some imagination to recognize the year of corn in the Coke bottle or the Big Mac. So you can see the Big Mac, it seems that it is made of flour, right? Wheat flour. But actually, it is combined with a lot of corn flour. And even the Coca-Cola, the primary ingredients of Coca-Cola are made coming out from corn. And you never knew that before, right? At the same time, the food industry has done a good job of persuading us that, look here, there's a number here. The 45,000 different items of the so-called SKUs. Different items of SKUs, we call the SKU refers to stock keeping units. Stock keeping units, that is every food, every product in the supermarket, there's a mark. It's a SKU number, denotes the specific model or specific product, okay? So every food has a SKU number. So in the supermarket, so basically in the supermarket, there's 70,000 new ones every year. And we can imagine that there will be a lot more. In every year, there will be 7,000 new ones. Just join the party in the supermarket and put on the shelves, right? Represent a genuine variety rather than so many clever arrangements of molecules extracted from the same plant, corn. So let's see this one. What does this mean? Basically, the food industry, they have created a lot of different kinds of food, snack, refreshment, and so on, and put on the shelves. How many of them? Well, we have the number here. We have at least 45. We have a 45,000 different kind of SKUs. And added with 17,000 new ones every year, so add in. So there are so many different kind of food over there, right? And these differences, this kind of varieties of food, just make you believe they are all coming out from different sources. They are genuine by themselves. But most of them are actually extract the molecules extracted from the same plant. That's amazing, right? They are from the same plant. 呼吁人不要玩手机. You're late and you play cell phone. Don't do that, okay? Study. Okay, so there are a rearrangement, and the food industry does not want you to know that. And let's move on to the next one. So food defines what we are. Let's look at here. You are what you eat, is often said. And if this is true, then what we mostly are is corn. We are corn. So we are corn. So let's talk about corn. Is that so molecular? And how can we become corn? Oh, more precisely, we are processed corn. Because the varieties on the in the supermarkets, varieties of products in the supermarkets are actually a rearrangement of the molecules of the corn. So they are processed, right? So we eat a lot of food out from the processed corn. So to some extent, we are processed corn instead of corn, right? Okay, and this proposition, this assumption, or this hypothesis, this proposition is susceptible to scientific proof. Scientific proof. We have a proof based on a scientific study, okay? So let's look at what kind of scientific proof we have. The first one, the same scientists who gleaned the composition of ancient diets from mummified human remains. So people died, they become mummy. So they are mummified human remains. And we can cut their belly and extract the food, the remaining food from their belly. And remains can do the same for you or me using a snip of hair or fingernails. So they have a snip of hair, right? So we can use the body remains of those old people, ancient people, try to use a DNA test and tell you, okay, those people indeed ate a lot of corns. So look at the DNA. So they show that the combination of their DNA actually come out from corn. So this is one. So how does it work? So the science works by identifying staple isotope. What is isotope? Tongwei-shu. Isotope refers to the weight, the ingredient, the atom of the carbon. So in Chinese, we call 同位素. So that is different. We can use the stable isotopes of carbon in human tissue. So this is the first one we need to know, okay? Isotope of carbon. In human tissue that bear the signatures. In fact, of the different types of plants that originally took them from the air and introduced them into the food chain. So we are carbon-based human being, right? We are carbon-based being. So basically, in our body, we have a lot of carbon in our body in the form of carbohydrate, 碳水化合物. So combined together, so people can use the carbon in our body and try to identify the isotope of carbon, 碳的同位素, so they can understand whether this isotope coming out from corn or some other plants or some other animals. So this is a scientific way to understand what kind of food are in our body. Is that right? Okay, so the intricacy of this process are worth following. So let's follow the process. So basically, now we are trying to identify what kind of isotope of carbon in our body, whether it is belong to corn or some other plants. So if we can identify most of the isotope of carbon in our body comes out from corn, then we are corn people, right? If the isotope of corn come out from wheat, then we become wheat people. And for Taiwanese here, we may eat a lot of rice. Then we found out the isotope of carbon come out from rice, then we are rice people. So very simple, very simple. So let's follow this process. Since they go some distance toward explaining how corn could have conquered our diet. So if we want to have a fully explain the process, that would take time. That would take time, right? So, and in turn, more of the Earth's surface than virtually any other domesticated species, our own included. So let's follow the next slide. Now our task is to trace carbon footprint, carbon. So now here comes the biological lesson, botany lesson, something we can enrich our understanding of the whole wide world about where we are, right? So the first one, after water, carbon is the most common element in our bodies. So now we have carbon. So after water, the next most important one, the most important element is carbon. So in our body, we have water and carbon, right? Indeed, in all living things on Earth. So we earthlings, the living things on Earth, are, as they say, a carbon life form. So our life is based on carbon. There's no doubt. Well, our life is not based on silicon, based on sand, right? So we are based on carbon. So we can imagine, where can we get our carbon inside our body? That is a good story. So as one scientist put it, carbon supplies life's quantity. And since it is the main structural element in living matter, and while much scarcer nitrogen supplies its quality. Nitrogen means in our air we have two different kinds, right? It's oxygen and nitrogen, 氮. So nitrogen is scarcer. It provides life's quality, carbon and nitrogen. Nitrogen is the base for us to have our protein. So the egg, the meat we eat, the egg, the meat, or some kind of grease we have is based on nitrogen. So we use nitrogen and we have protein. So we consume protein, and protein becomes the quality for our life, right? And the carbon is the quantity for our life. So if you look at me, I'm a little bit choppy here, right? So I may have a greater proportion of carbon than you, because I'm fatter. I have a lot of quantity than you. But how about the quality of me? I'm not so sure how much protein I have. Maybe less than you. You are thinner, stronger, you have a little bit more muscle than me, right? So you have more nitrogen than me. You have better quality. Okay. So let's look at the process of corn become food through photosynthesis. We have to introduce photosynthesis. So now, let's take a look about this one. 园长，你不要再玩手机了。 Okay? Huh? 你查资料吗? Okay, great. That is great. Sorry. So the process of carbon becoming food through photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, let's look at the photo. What is the meaning of photo here? Anyone? Photo, I just told you. Light, is that right? Light. And SYN, SYN means together, together. Syn. And how about THE? How about THE? THE and THEO means God. God. Okay, so why does photosynthesis means that we use light combined with the grief, we can create the energy, we can absorb the carbon and become energy, right? 光合作用. And photosynthesis means it comes out from the synthesis. Synthesis refers to synthesize. Synthesis, it is, let's look at the thesis first. Thesis is an article based on God's words. Thesis. And we have a 论文, something that is pure and you don't have to doubt about that, right? For example, theory. What is theory? Theory is God's words, a system of God's words, so you don't have to doubt about the theory. Okay? And the synthesis is to put all the God words together to purify, to combine, to contrast, and eventually produce something that is for the last part, the essence of something. That is a synthesis. And throughout the process of photo, light. So basically, photosynthesis is using light to combine a lot of different ingredients and produce some other stuff. This is photosynthesis. Okay, so let's examine the process of carbon becoming food through photosynthesis. First one, originally, the atoms of carbon in the form of carbon dioxide. What is carbon dioxide? Carbon dioxide is 二氧化碳. Is that right? Why it is 二氧化碳? Because oxy is oxygen. Di is 2. So 2 oxygen with the carbon. So we call 二氧化碳, carbon dioxide. Okay? So basically, where can we get our carbon? The atom of carbon is flowing in the air. The atom of carbon is flowing in the air, floating in the air. So part of a carbon dioxide molecule. So basically it is there. So the only way, so we need to take the carbon atom into our food chain, right? So how can we make the change? The only way we have is very simple. To recruit these carbon atoms for the molecules necessary to support life. The carbohydrates. What is carbohydrate? Carbon, 碳, right? And the hydrate, HYDRA, refers to water. So water and the carbon combine together, 碳水化合物, carbohydrates. Okay? So the carbohydrates, amino acids, proteins, and lipids. 氨基酸, 蛋白质, and 脂肪. So there are different kind of energy food, right? So it is by means of photosynthesis. So the only way we can use to extract atoms of carbon from the air, getting into the chain of food, getting into the food chain is by photosynthesis. Okay, this is one. And using energy from the sun. So we need to have a sun, and also we need to have the green cells of plants. Sun and the green cells of plants, they will combine together to combine carbon atoms taken from the air. So carbon atom actually come out from the air, not from anywhere. It is from air with water. So we have several ingredients here. Basically, first, we need to have the green cells of plants. And with the help of the energy from the sun, then the green cells, using the energy of the sun, and to combine carbon atoms taken from the air with water and elements drawn from the soil. So here we have carbon atoms from the air. And we have the water and other elements from the soil, right? So combined together, and who gives the power? Well, the green cells of plants have to depend on energy of the sun. So we call photosynthesis. So combined together to form the simple organic compounds that stand at the base of every food chain. So imagine this. Years ago, many years ago, the air floating here in that classroom has already become part of my fingernail here. Throughout the food chain, the process, it takes time, right? So it's a little bit difficult to imagine. So let's try to say that again. The air, the carbon dioxide floating in the air few years ago in the classroom. You were not here, but I am here, right? And throughout the mysterious photosynthesis process, that specific atom of carbon has been transformed to some kind of, let's say, carbohydrate somewhere. And accidentally, I consumed that little bit of the carbohydrate from the food I bought from Dingzhongjie, and now I become. So basically, part of me comes out from the air. You can think about the logical link, right? It may happen in this way. Would that be wonderful to think about this way? Maybe, right? So basically, we are all coming out from the air. Yeah, I can say that we all come out from the thin air. So in modern figure space, so that's why we say it is more than a figure of speech to say that plants create life out of the thin air. So we say we have to admit that. Where does life come from? It is created by plant. And the plant creates life from thin air, just from air. That's it. So it is more than a figure of speech. It is a fact. So all of us come out from some air. I don't know, but really, ooh, it's kind of spooky, right? So there's a ghost. There's a floating over there. But it is this way. Okay, so this is what we are. And now let's talk about corn. And corn is even more efficient. We know every kind of plants has all kinds of plants have the ability to conduct photosynthesis, right? So with photosynthesis, the plants are capable of using the energy of the sun and combined with the water and other elements from the soil and the carbon dioxide from the air, and to create the food for us, for all the earthlings in the whole wide world. But But corn is more peculiar. Corn goes about this procedure a little differently than most other plants. Let's look at how different it is. A difference that not only renders the plant more efficient than most. So this difference, only a very small difference, make corn the most efficient plant in the whole wide world. Okay? It is very efficient than most of other plants, but happens also to preserve the identity of carbon atoms that recruits. Okay, so the second part, what does this mean? What does this mean? Previously, we said that when we die and when our ancestors die, they become mummy, right? And the scientists will go there to cut their fingernail and try to identify the trace, the remains of the carbon in their body, in the fingernail, right? So basically, we can try to understand, try to study the combination of the carbon in their fingernail and to understand what kind of food they eat. Okay, so now there's a link between this one because corn has a unique characteristics, different than others. So when scientists identify the corn remain in the snail, then they identify the specific characteristic only coming out from corn. Then they can say, this man eats a lot of corn. Because we have found traces of carbon only unique to corn. Okay, so let's see what is the uniqueness of the corn here. So here, so basically this kind of difference makes corn, even after they have been transformed into things like cattle and ringings and hamburgers. It doesn't matter what kind of process to transform the corn into a drink, into the snack, into the hamburgers and so on. Not to mention the human body is nourished on those things. The basic combination of corn, the corn trace, the unique corn combination about carbon will always remain there. So you can imagine this. You eat corn. The unique corn carbon traces will remain in your body. It doesn't matter where you go. You die, the corn trace is still there. So the scientist is able to identify the corn trace out from your body and to understand how much corn you consume through your life, right? So the characteristic only uniquely to corn will always remain there. Okay, so let's try to see the differences between corn and other plants. Here's a very important part. Let's look here. Most plants during photosynthesis, they will create compounds that have 3 carbon atoms. Okay, so basically this is the way. 3 carbon atoms, they will connect 3. So this is the carbon molecule. 碳分子 consists of 3 carbons. Okay, but corn with a small handful of other species made compounds that have 4. So that is a very difference, right? So here is a corn compound. It creates a carbon compound consisted of 4 carbons instead of 3 carbon atoms. So most of the plants, when they have their photosynthesis, the molecule, the compound molecule, the carbon molecule created by those plants have 3 carbons. But corn is different. Corn has 4. This is corn. So they all go through the same process of photosynthesis, right? Cone is able to produce 4 cones, 4 carbon atoms in the compound. But for other plants, there are only 3. So we call this is C4 plant. So basically, cone is a kind of C4 plant. Other plant is called as C3. So cone over here is a C4 plant. So this is quite different, right? Okay, C4 plant. So basically, cone along with a small handful of other species make compounds that have 4. That's a very, very different, unique characteristic, right? So here, C4, the botanical nickname for this gifted group of plants, which wasn't identified until the 1970s. So actually, cone and a very small handful of other species are C4 plants. But C4 plants has not been identified until 1970s. So this is a very recent discovery, right? Okay, so what is cone? Cone is a C4 plant. Okay, so now let's move on to the next one. So what is the advantage to become a C4 plant? So let's look at the C4 trick. C4 trick. The C4 trick represents an important economy for a plant. Economy refers to you use as little as possible the resources to create as much possible as the output. So if you can do this, you have a cost efficiency, right? So if you have a higher cost efficiency, then you have the economy, okay? 效率. So basically, this is the important economy for a plant. And this give it an advantage, especially in areas where water is scarce and temperature is high. Especially for in the land there is no water, and also the temperature is always high. In such place, a C4 plant can have a better life. So let's look at the process of the plants gathering carbon from air. Let's look at the process first. So in order to gather carbon atoms first from the air, now we follow the process. The plants wants to get carbon atom from the air, and this plant has to open its stomata. What is stomata? It's a very small orifice on the surface of the leaf, 气孔. Okay, it is called as 气孔. So stomata. So basically, the green cells of the leaf, the green cells of the plants, when they want to gather carbon atoms from the air, this plant has to open its stomata. So here is the explanation of stomata. The microscopic orifice, very small hole opening, very small mouth on the leaf. Okay, it has to open it in the leaves, through this orifice, plants both take in and exhaust gases. So this is 气孔. Okay, something you can get through the gas. So every time the stoma opens, so it opens to admit carbon dioxide. Admit means to take in carbon dioxide. Yeah, okay, carbon dioxide you can get in, but in order to get the carbon dioxide to get in, it has to open its stoma, right? Just like you, if you want to eat, some food, you have to open your mouth, right? For sure, you have to open your mouth. So now a plant says, hey, I want to have some carbon dioxide. So it has to open its stoma. The same. Okay, so every time a stoma opens to admit carbon dioxide, precious molecules of water escape. Open, then water out, and the carbon dioxide is in, right? Precious water molecule. The water will just come out. So imagine this. Water coming out, going out from the leaf, from the plant itself. But how about the plant is in a very dry, hot place? Then the water will become very precious, right? Okay, so let's look here. The pressure molecules, water, escape. So it is as though, let's imagine the scenario. Every time you open your mouth to eat, every time you open your mouth to eat, right? And you lost a quantity of blood. Well, just like that. But for plants, it's just like that, right? Because this is a very dry and hot area. And you ask the plant to open its stomata to admit carbon dioxide. But in the meantime, it has to get rid of some of the water. The water molecule will just run away, right? So just like you, every time you eat some food, open your mouth, and in the meantime, you are lost a quantity of blood. So what would you do? Since eating is a must for you, right? So what would you do to avoid to lose too much blood? Well, ideally, you would open your mouth as seldom as possible, right? But in the meantime, ingesting as much food as you could with every bite. When you do this, you know if every time you open your mouth, then you will lose a quantity of blood. So what would be the rational choice for you? You need to eat, but you need to preserve your blood, right? So you will open your mouth as seldom as possible, but in the meantime, devour as much as possible with every bite. Well, this is just exactly happening to the civil plant. Civil plant just do this. So let's look here. This is essentially what a civil plant does. We know civil plant lives in a dry, hot area, right? Water is scarce. So basically, it will try to open its stomata to admit as much as the carbon dioxide, and in the meantime, to avoid too much loss of the water. Is that right? So by recruiting extra atoms, carbon, during each instance of photosynthesis, so imagine this, instead of taking in three, one bite, now the C4 plant has been trained to absorb one extra carbon. So it has become a C4 plant. Okay, so that's why this is the economy of photosynthesis. So by recruiting extra atom of carbon during each instance of photosynthesis, by doing this, corn plant is able to, first, limit its loss of water. Smart, clever, right? And also fix the problem. That is, take from the atmosphere and link in a useful molecule significantly more carbon than other plants. Instead of taking in three with one mouth, one instance of opening the stoma, now the carbon, the corn is able to take in 4 instead of 3. So it can open less, fewer times, but devouring, taking in more carbon in the same time, right? So that's why corn is more efficient in terms of photosynthesis. Okay, So let's take a 10 minutes break and then back again. Okay. So this is roll call, and hurry up, and we are going to end in 10 seconds. Okay, the roll call ends now. So we know, so for now, we know that the corn is quite unique in a way that it is a seafood plant. So every time it opens its stoma to admit carbon atom, it attracts 4 instead of 3, right? So that is great. So let's look at the competing for energy. So we are human beings, we are kind of animals, right? So at its most basic, let's look at the story of life, our story of life on Earth. What does that mean? So basically, the story of life on Earth is the competition among species to capture and store as much energy as possible. So we compete for energy. For example, you eat, right? You capture energy and store in your body. And gradually, just like me, I'm becoming fatter and fatter because I store more and more energy in my body. So but this kind of competition, capture and storing energy, either directly from the sun, in the case of plants, right? Plants take energy from the sun through photosynthesis and combine water elements and carbon together create the food for us, right? So this is the case for plants. Or in the case of animals, just like it. We can eat plants or plant eaters. That is true, also true, right? So the energy, basically the energy is stored in the form of carbon molecules and majorly in calories. So how much food you eat, basically we count the calories. And for a young adult, 2,500 calories per day should be enough, right? But apparently we eat more than that, just like me, right? So the calorie we eat, whether in an ear of corn or a steak, represent a package of energies once captured by a plant. So look here. It doesn't matter what kind of food you eat. They all come out from some kind of plants. They all come out. So the energy is transformed from one organism to another kind of organism. So eventually just moved out to us. So we eat a lot of different things. If we eat plants, then the energy come out from directly from the sun. If we eat meat, the energy indirectly come out from the sun. So that's us. So this kind of simple trick helps explain the Kong's plan's success in this competition. So imagine this: every time the Kong tries to get in the carbon atoms, it gets 4 at a time. Other planes can have only 3. Winners is for the Kong, right? So few planes can manufacture quite as much organic matter and calories from the same quantity of sunlight and water and basic elements as Kong. Why Kong is so miraculous? Because Kong is capable of doing the C4 trick. Okay, so this is very interesting. I want you to pay attention to this. 97% of what a Kong plant is comes from the air. And only 3% from the ground. So you can imagine a cone, right? 97% of the cone, all the different components, energy, and you can imagine molecules actually come out from air. Only 3% of the cone come out from the ground. This is pretty new to us, right? We never knew that, but it is true. It is true. So that is why Kong is so efficient, because it takes 4 atoms all the time instead of 3, right? Okay, and then let's move to the other issue. But what we know, Kong is in us. Why? We know that Kong is capable of capturing 4 atoms at a time instead of 3, right? But it doesn't matter the difference of the number of cones you take into, because after years we become mummies, and then the cone will be isolated to individual carbon atom over there, right? So you can only find 1 atom at a time. So you have no way to distinguish whether we ate before we're coming out from cone or some other plants. Okay, so that's why we say the C4 trick doesn't yet, however, explain how a scientist could tell that a given carbon atom in a human bone owes its presence there to a photosynthetic event that occurred in the leaf of one kind of plant and not another. Let's say in corn instead of lettuce or wheat. Because if corn atom is always the same, then there's no way for us to distinguish the difference of the corn we eat, right? Okay, so we need to have another understanding. So the scientists can do this just because here comes the key issue here. Because all carbon is not created equal. We have corn, right? But not all corn, we have corn creating, extracting carbon, but not all carbon is the same. Carbon has some difference in themselves. Okay, let's look here. Some carbon atoms called isotope, 同位素, right? Carbon atoms called 同位素 have more than the usual complements of 6 proton and 6 neutrons. Proton and neutron, 中子, 质子与中子, right? Proton is 质子, neutron is 中子. So they compose the weight for the carbon. So 6 plus 6 equals 12, right? So most of the carbon atom is C12. Most of them is the so-called C12 carbon. Consists of 6 protons and 6 neutrons. So the weight of that carbon is 12. But how about the others? The other is the so-called C13 carbon atom. It has 6 protons. Strange enough, there are 7 neutrons here. So they have a C13 atoms, carbon atoms. So now look here, we have 2 kinds of carbons. We have 2 kinds of carbon. One kind of carbon has 6 protons add with 6 neutrons. So altogether, the weight for that carbon is 12, right? The other kind of carbon atoms consists of 6 protons and 7 neutrons. So altogether, the weight for this kind of carbon atom is 13. So now we have 2 different kinds of carbon atoms, right? One is called as C12. The other one is called as C13 carbons. So basically, carbon is different in itself. There are 2 different kinds, carbon 12, C12 and C13, right? Okay, so let's move on to understand why we can use the differences to understand the food we eat come out from corn, okay? Let's look at here. The answer lies here. C4 plants acquire more carbon-13 than ordinary plants do. Imagine this. Let me give you a simple illustration here. C4 plant, every time it opens its stomata to attract 4, right, 4 atoms. But if in the meantime it can attract heavier carbon, that would be much better, right? So basically, every time C4 plants, that corn, opens its stomata to attract 4 carbon atoms inside itself. Not only 4, but also heavier carbon. So it prefers to have a heavier carbon atoms to take in. So which one is heavier? C13, right? So most of the time, corn plant will try to absorb C13. So look here. Every time he has 4 atoms, right? And the atoms, most of them is C13 instead of C12. Which one is heavier? Of course, this combination is heavier, right? So this is better. This is better. But on the other side, the so-called C3 plant, other plants, they are more delicate. They would like to have C12. It doesn't matter. Every time this kind of plants try to absorb the delicate C12, lighter, juicier, maybe, delicious, maybe, right? But strangely enough, it doesn't attract a lot of C13. It has the ability to make the distinction. So imagine this, each time we have 2 kinds of plants. One is C3 plants, the other is C4, just like corn, right? Corn. So we have many times of the photosynthesis. For C3, it will attract C12, C12, C12. But for C4, it will attract C13, C13, and C13. Sometimes it will have a C12, but eventually it will become heavier, right? So it can come down, all the way down, and eventually find out the carbon molecules created by C4 plant will have a higher proportion of C13. Is that right? But for C3, it has a higher proportion of C12. Okay, now we have a very important differences here, right? So how can scientists find out that the food we consume come out from the corn? Because they found that there is a higher proportion of the C13 in the remains. It is because corn has the ability to absorb more C13 carbon atoms. This is a very simple practice, right? Okay, so now let's read the test here. So here, C4 plants acquire more carbon-13 than ordinary. For whatever reason, we don't know why they prefer. But when a C4 plant goes scavenging for its 4 packets of carbon, every time it's 4, right? And but it takes taking more carbon-13 than ordinary C3 plant. The more, the better, okay? Which exhibit a marked preference for the more common 12. This one prefer carbon-12. But for C4 plant, like cone, prefer C13. So you can imagine that along with the different sequences of the photosynthesis, C4 plant will create more carbon-13 molecules. Is that right? Okay. So C4 plant is very greedy. Greedy for carbon. A C4 plant can't afford to discriminate among isotopes. Oh, C12, C13. Oh, C13 is not delicious, so I don't want to take. No, they do not have the luxury. So they will take in whatever they have, right? But C12, the C3 plants, they are more delicate. They are ladies and gentlemen, right? So they will screen away the C13 away. No, I only want to take a C12. It's smaller, juicier, and so on, right? So end up with relatively more carbon-13 in C4 plant. It's quite easy to understand, right? So the higher the ratio of carbon-13 to carbon-12 in a person's flesh, the more carbon. So eventually the scientists can determine if you have more, the higher level of C13 carbon in your body, then this is the evidence that you consume a higher level of corn. This cannot lie, because corn is greedy for C4 and greedy for C13 carbon atoms, right? Okay, so the more carbon it has been in his diet, or in the diet of the animals he or she ate. Here is the parenthesis, additional information. As far as we are concerned, basically, there's no difference for us. It makes little difference whether we consume relatively more or less carbon-13. We will not die for that. Don't worry. Don't worry, it's just different. Okay, just a difference, right? Okay, so now we know how to distinguish the corn from other plants and how to understand why we eat more corn instead of the plants. Because in our body, we have more carbon-13 carbon atoms than it signifies that we have consumed more corn than others. Okay, so now let's move on. Let's try to argue about what we are. We are what we eat. It seems to our conclusion, right? So one would expect to find a comparatively high proportion of carbon-13 in the fraction of people whose staple food of choice is corn. So we would expect Mexicans, they should eat a lot of corn, right? So they are corn people, no doubt, most famously. But how about Americans? Americans eat much more wheat than corn. They eat more wheat. So how about the Europeans? Europeans who colonized America regarded themselves as wheat people. They are wheat people. Because wheat, it seems to a little bit more noble than corn, right? So wheat in the West has always been considered the most refined or civilized grain. Prejudice. But it is in this way. So if you are asked to choose whether you are wheat people or a corn person, most of us refers to Americans would probably still consider ourselves wheat people. So are Americans wheat people or corn people? Let's try to examine. So except the proud corn-fed Midwesterners, and they don't know the half of it. Though by now, let's look here. By now, the whole idea of identifying with the print at all struck us as a little old-fashioned. Really, it doesn't matter what kind of people we are, right? But it's just fun. So let's look here who we are. Americans eat a lot of beef, right? So maybe let's say they are beef people. Beef people. But nowadays, actually, they eat a lot of chicken. So are they chicken people? Oh, which sounds not nearly so good, right? So it's probably close to the truth of that matter. So when we say what kind of people we are, we say we are what we eat. Then we have to look at what kind of food we eat a lot. So what are you? Are you beef people, chicken people, wheat people, or corn people? I have no idea. Let's move to the next one. So why we know corn is in us? The scientific proof for what we are. We have to count down the science. So what does scientists say about us? It doesn't matter what we call ourselves. We prefer to be called as wheat people, corn people, or beef people, or chicken people, or pork people, or what kind of people. But carbon-13 doesn't lie. The heavier carbon atom, right? The researcher report that it is now we in the nose are the true people of corn. Actually, Americans and Canadians eat a lot of corn or processed corn food. Who have compared the isotope of in the fresh or hair of Americans to those in the same tissues of Mexicans? Americans and Mexicans, basically, they eat a lot of corns because carbon-13. The proportion, the percentage of carbon-13 in their flesh is much higher than the other people. Todd Dawson, a Berkeley biologist who's done this sort of research, researcher, Tom Dawson, told the writer, the author of the book, he said, quote, when you look at the isotope ratios, okay, the carbon atoms ratio, right? We North Americans look like corn chip with legs. Corn chip with legs. So this is a potato chip, right? Corn chip. And then this is the leg. Just walking on the street. Because Americans eat a lot of processed corn. Americans eat a lot of processed corn. So they are corn chip with a leg. So that's the North Americans. So compared to us, Mexicans today consume a far more varied carbon diet. So contrary to our perceptions, right? If we call them corn people, they may have been changed because they eat a lot more other food. The animals they eat still eat grass because in Mexico, they believe Mexicans regard feeding corn to livestock as a sacrilege. It's a sacrilege, it means it's a humiliation to God. So they do not use corn to feed the livestock, to feed animals. So much of their proteins come from legumes. Legume is beans, legumi. And they still sweeten their beverage with sugar cane sugar. So look here, no corn, right? Okay, so can we just call Mexicans corn people? Well, not quite true today. But can we call Americans corn people? Yeah, maybe they are processed corn people, maybe. Okay, so let's us processed corn and walking. So from now you can imagine that you have a corn head and with a corn feet and walk on the street. So congratulations to us. We become processed corn, right, and walk. Okay, so here comes the end of the story. When we talk about the complexity of the society, food is very important. Food can tell the difference of a culture. When you get into a new place, The first difference you have identified is that food is different, right? So food can tell you a lot of different story about how people live in this land that practice all the time. So food is very important. That's why we'll talk about something about food. Later time, if you want to study culture, have more cultural studies, then it will be very fascinating to explore the different practice of food on the table from the different families in different countries. That should be interesting, right? So this is one way for you to open your mind. People are different in many, many different ways. Okay, so now let's move to etymology. The intricacies of this process are worth following, since they go some distance toward explaining how corn could have conquered our diet, and in turn, more of the Earth's surfaces than virtually any other domesticated species, our own included. So all the bold-faced word vocabulary are based on roots. Intricacy. Intricacy, that is come out from the TRIC. TRIC refers complexity, perplexity, hindrance, toys, or tricks. So if I trick you, trick, T-R-I-C-K, trick, this is a trick. Means this is a trick. That's it. It's a perplexities, get you feel confused, some kind of maze, right? So intricacy refers to some complexity. And the other one is conquer. Conquer come out from Q-U-E-R or Q-U-S-T. It refers to seek. For example, require. If there's a word require, I seek back from you. So I seek back from you. What does that mean? It means I need something out from you. So I require. Okay? And the other one is request. Inquire. What is inquire? Inquire means seek into. So you examine, you investigate, you ask, inquire. Okay? And the virtue, V-E-R, refers to excel or manhood, virtue. So this is good, man is good. So virtue is good. Virtuoso is a person, a man who can sing a high speech, 男高音. And the other one, domesticate, dom, means to tame, to dwell. So domesticate, you put, at is a verb. Domesticate is to put something into home. So animals, if they are domesticated, they become dogs, cows, sheep, available for people, right? Domesticate. So this is part of the etymology. And for more, you can just go to the list, the vocabulary list there. There are a bunch of words. Try to use Latin roots for you to understand different combination of the words. Okay, so now let's move to sentence structure. Most of us would probably still consider ourselves with people. Okay, so now it's a little bit, I would like to ask you, so could you answer what is the subject for this sentence? And this is also a roll call, and please type in your answer. Most of us would probably still consider ourselves with people. So which one, what is the subject for this one? Okay, I'm going to end. Okay, so the answer for this one is most of us so basically the subject for this one is most. Would consider is the verb, and ourselves is the object, and with people is the object complement. So this is the structure for the sentence. And let's look here. The subject for this one is not most of us, only most. Because most is a pronoun. Most is a pronoun. And what kind of most? Of us. Of us is a prepositional phrase. And it functions as an adjective to modify most. Okay? So basically we have only the most here to become the subject. So most would consider ourselves people. What kind of people? We people, modify, right? And would consider, under what condition? Still consider, and probably still consider. So basically these two adverbs are used as modifier to modify consider. So the primary components here is most would consider ourselves people. That's it. Okay. So of course we can use a sentence diagram to represent this. So this is what we have. Look here. Most subject would consider verb, right? Ourselves, object, and people is the object complement. And object complement is used to equal to ourselves. Okay, what about most of us? So this is a prepositional phrase, a modifier used to modify most. And would consider, probably, and still, both are used to modify would consider. So they hang here. And with, what kind of people? With people, so with used to modify people. So basically you can see from here, we can take all of these components away, and this is still a sentence. Modifiers are used to modify, so they are not necessary to exist in one sentence. So most would consider ourselves people. So this is one of the sentence structure. So let's see the different sentence structures here. Previously, we have highlighted 5 different sentence structures, right? Still remember that? Let me refresh those sentences again for you. Previously, we have 5 different ones. And actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Actually, 1, 2, 3 are classified into the same sentence. That is subject plus be verb and followed with subject complement, right? But the only difference for the subject complement for the 3 sentence pattern is this is a noun. You can use noun for subject complement, or you can use adjective for subject complement, or you can use adverb for time or place to become a subject complement. So henceforth we have 3 different sentence structure, right? And the 4 and 5 still follow a very similar pattern. That is subject follow with the linking verb. Linking verb and also follow with a subject complement. But for linking verb, we have only 2 kinds of subject complement. One is noun the other one is adjective. This is what we have learned in last lesson, right? But today, we continue to offer you another 5 different kind of sentence structure. Okay, so now let's take a look. The 5 different sentence structure, number 6 is very simple. Only subject and intransitive verb. Intransitive verb. Intransitive verb. Okay? In, trans, I-T-I-I-V-E. Trans means across. And I here combined with adjective is not. I-T-I is to go. I-V-E is adjective, right? So basically this is not something that you need to go across. You don't across. The verb does not go across to object. So that is 不及物. Okay, you don't go to the object. But how about transitive 及物动词? It means you have to go across. Okay, so now we have an intransitive verb. So that would be very easy. This is the full segment here. Subject and a verb, intransitive verb. So for example, passing a certain point in popularity, the shoes tipped. Is that right? Shoes is the subject, and tipped is the intransitive verb, the end. And the other one, 7, 8, 9, and 10, they all come out with an object, different kind of object. For sentence pattern number 7, subject, transitive verb, and direct object. Just like this one. For the next 60 minutes, the 2 teams played spirit aggressive hockey. Subject, transitive verb, and object. Okay, so this is the end of the sentence. And how about 8, 9, and 10? Let's look at 8. 8 has something different. That is subject, transitive verb, indirect object, and the direct object. For example, here, this subject gave transitive verb, algorithm, indirect object, and direct object is the power here. So this gave algorithm power. It means this gave power to the algorithm, right? So in order to complete the sentence, you have to take, you have to contact, you have to touch power first. So power is the direct object. And the power and the next one you need to contact is algorithm. So algorithm is the indirect. Just like the sentence here. I give you an apple. So in order to give you an apple, I need to touch apple first. Give the apple to you. Is that right? So apple is the direct object, and you is the indirect. I teach you English. So basically, I teach English to you. Is that right? So there is a sequence. So this is sentence structure number 8. And let's look at 9 and 10. They are the same. But the only difference is the speech for the object complement. So let's look here. Subject, transitive verb, and direct object, and followed with object complement. And there are 2 forms of object complement. One is noun, the other one is adjective. Okay, so now most of us consider ourselves with people. So let's look here. People is equal to ourselves, right? So that's why we call object complement. 受词补语. And the other one, no one tried to make hush puppies trendy. Okay, let's see this one. No one is the subject. Tries to make is the verb. And the hush puppies is the object. And trendy is the adjective and functions as an object complement, right? Used to be equal to hush puppy. So hush puppy is trendy. Just like here say, ourselves people. They are equal. Okay, so this is the sentence structure for you. And we will have a specific designed workshop for you to learn the different sentence structure. Okay, so we can continue to next assignment. When Mexicans, they say, I am maize. So, of course, we know it is because they eat a lot of corn, right? Corn walking. So I want you to elaborate the rationale behind Mexicans' expression of I am maize. Well, you can find the answers from the book. And also you can try to explore some other information from the website. Try to say the cultural perspective of Mexican, why they love to eat corn and so on, right? So basically, when we talk about elaborate, it means you have to provide the in-depth discussion on the issue. So it's not just write 2 or 3 words. So you have to elaborate to describe in detail or argue provide more arguments on this one, okay? And remember, there's no right or wrong answers. I want you to look at the question and to pop up your own position and find out the evidence from other articles to sustain your argument. Okay, so this is assignment number 1. Number 2. So what are the major differences between corn and other plants? C3, C4, the ability to take in C13 instead of C12, right? So these are the differences. And there's a good rationale why corn needs to become so powerful, so greedy, so aggressive. There must be reasons, right? Okay, so try to find out and write something about this. Assignment number 2. And number 3. Do you think that there's a linkage between the food we eat and the culture we have? So elaborate your argument in 300-word essay. Few days ago, I watched a YouTube channel, and there was a video, very interesting, fascinating. In a very far away village in Sichuan, mainland China, and people there, they were used to keep pig, the whole pig, and hang the pig under the roof, and just use wind to dry the pig. Of course, they were stuck in the stomach and still with some kind of strange Chinese medicine. And so the pig, they kill the pig raw without cooking it, just hang under the roof of their house and put up there for quite a long time. How long it is? For 50 years. And after 50 years, they cut the meat and eat the pig. The food they consume, they prepare the food in this way. There must be something very interesting about their cultural practice. Or otherwise, why do you want to store your pig under the roof for 50 years, raw and dried for 50 years? The whole pig. I mean, not the lamb, not the feet, the whole pig just hanging over there. So strange, right? Every place has different practice of the eating food. So they are closely related to their cultural practice. Try to find out. You must have yours. You must have yours, right? For example, why Americans want to have the turkeys for the Thanksgiving dinner? There must be something there, right? Okay, so this is the end of for today's lesson. Do you have any question? Next week, we will have our workshop number 1. And that will be a little bit different of our procedure for lecture. But that will be fun. That will be fun. There is more interactions between you and me. Okay, so I look forward to that. And again, we will have our quiz next time. And further with that, we are going to have our workshop number 1. So let's have fun. And thank you for today. Thank you. And then say thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's a way for interactions.